Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I do appreciate that immensely. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you have a question about the video or a suggestion for a video, or you just want to tell me how you do things, or even just to say hi, that's all really nice, and I do appreciate those comments as well. Every month I give my patrons over on Patreon a theme to make a piece based on, and this month's theme is gardening, something which we actually tried this year for the first time in a long time. And I realized it's almost the end of the month and I hadn't done a piece with that theme, so I'm going to make some pea pod earrings. I've seen some other versions of pea pods in jewelry before, so I'm going to give it a try and see if I can do something cool. I made a prototype for one of them, and so I'm just going to do the other one in front of you to show you how I accomplished that one, and then I'll clean them up and show you what they look like at the end. I like making jewelry that represents natural stuff sometimes. I think it's kind of fun, and I think this will turn out to be a cool project, so we'll see. Before we do that, though, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I have a new one. Welcome, Antonio G. I appreciate your support, and I think you'll find that that's a nice group of people over there, so thanks to all of you. And thanks to my YouTube subscribers as well. We just passed 21,800, if I remember correctly. That's amazing, and I do appreciate your support as well. I love the nice comments that I get on YouTube. It's really nice when people tell me that I've had some kind of an effect on their either skills or just their interest in this or whatever. That's kind of nice to know. So thank you for those. Thank you also for the financial support, like the Buy Me a Coffees and the Super Thanks and the people who buy my merch or my ebooks. That really makes it possible for me to continue doing this, so I do appreciate that as well. All right, well, let's get started on this Pea Pod project. Allergies are kicking in today. I'm a little bit congested, so I apologize if I sound a little nasally tonight. Okay, well, this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. The more recent ones, I try to put some useful information on the back. This one has a gauged inches to millimeter chart on it, which I find pretty useful sometimes. I also really like the fact that they have this dot matrix in the background. It makes it easier for me to sketch things out because I have trouble keeping things symmetrical. I also really like having a record of what I've done anymore, because that way I can't always remember everything I've made in the past, and it's kind of nice to have a reference for that. So get yourself one or two of those. They're really kind of handy. So, all right, so like I said, I'm going to make some pea pods. I'm going to make some little silver balls out of scrap silver, and we'll probably start with that. I'm going to cut some 22 gauge sheet, which is 0.66 millimeters wide, or thick, I should say, into little shapes like this. And since I already made a prototype, I can show you I scribed out. Where is that? Oh, right here. It's just kind of what I envisioned a pea pod shape to be. Now, whether the gardeners will agree with me or not, I don't know. So that's 22 gauge sheet. We'll cut two of those. We're going to have to dome them a little bit and then kind of play with the angles to get these two edges to line up like a canoe, kind of. And then we'll make this little top thing out of a disc that I cut out some little V's and 4 spots. And then we'll dome that sharply so that we can mount it as like a little, I don't know what that part of the pea pod is called, but where it attaches to the stem there. And then this will be just some 14 gauge round wire that we taper with a file. So 14 gauge is 1.6 millimeters, and let's see. Finally, I'll put some ear wires on at the end. I'll make it out of 20 gauge round wire. If you haven't seen how I make ear wires, it's kind of a nice way to make them, and they're really strong and they last a long time that way. So I'll show you how to do that as well in this video. So, but let's start by making some balls out of scrap. My last video was about making rings out of scrap, so I still have a pile of scrap there. And One of the things I hadn't done yet on this charcoal block was to carve some round holes in it with a ball burr, and so I did that. If you do that, you end up getting a little bit nicer balls because they're closer to round. And I'm going to make one or two here just in front of you, and then I'll probably make the rest off camera for time's sake. But let's start with about that much. That's just some scrap silver that I had hanging around. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. I use a liquid flux that I drip on with a dropper bottle. And I want that to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to add a little bit more to it. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's their Acetylene Air torch. And it burns hotter than a propane torch, but not as hot as oxyacetylene. So it's kind of a great happy medium for silver work, in my opinion. And I use a #1 tip on it for the most part. I keep meaning to get a 0 too, but I've never used a 0 on this before. One of my Presto lights, which is kind of an antique torch that I have, I think has a tip that's about a 0. It sort of fills up the little cavity that I put in there. Let's let that cool off and see if that's a good size. It probably wouldn't matter if you just made them on the flat surface on this one, because the backside you're not going to see anyway. So, but that comes out almost round. So that's a pretty good size, I think. Let's make a couple more in that size range. I think it needs just a tiny bit more. Try to never pick the balls up with the tweezers until they turn black again, because if you do it when they're red, you can crush them a little bit. You don't want to have squished balls. Not when they're supposed to represent peas anyway. It was really hot today where I'm at. When I was out working in the yard today, I got pretty sweaty, so I'm not my usual finely coiffed self today. I apologize. I can show you the prototype. I should show you the prototype in advance here. Wow, those are really pretty nice balls. Usually they're more ovally, but I got those pretty round for some reason. Never made pea pods before, so it was kind of a fun experiment. Okay, so this is kind of what it's. You can see I got two pieces of sheet kind of domed outwards, and then I squished them down over the balls a little bit. So, and then put this little cap thing on top. And I think once I get it all cleaned up, I'll probably just put a little black max in the inside of that or something to make it really dark on the inside. That'll make them stand out pretty well. But yeah, I think those look like pea pods. Those will be cute earrings, I think. So, I suppose you could make a whole series of vegetable earrings if you wanted to, if that would appeal to gardeners. All right, let's see. So let's cut out those two side pieces. So I think I'll cut this one out, and then I'll use that as a template to scribe the second one. And you can, if you want to, you could use a saw to do this. I'm just going to use my little snips because there's nothing terribly complex about this shape. Just going to smooth this out a little bit. We have a pepper plant that's producing. I've never grown a pepper plant before. That would make some cool earrings, some little peppers. I know I've seen, like, you know, factory-made pepper earrings before. I'm sure you could hand make some. That would be fun. I'll have to think about that. Pretty close. Let's scribe out a second one. You could make probably a cool pair of Pea Pod earrings where you put like green stones in there instead of these. Part of it was the reason I didn't do that is because I didn't want to make 3 or 6 bezels tonight. Those are pretty similar. Okay. Close enough, I think. Alright, let's... I guess we can just... start big and work our way down a little bit. Somebody's going to tell me that I need to get a brass hammer, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Oopsie. To match up, this needs to be down. I gotta try and flatten this out a little bit along this edge over here. Because ultimately I want those 2 bottom pieces to line up nicely next to each other. So So on the first one, what I did, I got it pretty close to where it's lined up, and I soldered it just a little bit along the length where it touched, and it was still kind of like this on the ends. And then after it was attached, then I was able to bend those in together nicely and then solder it the rest of the way. So I'll keep playing with the angles here until we get them to line up nice. For this part, I think I'm going to use this softer pad, so I can just push it into it a little bit. Stay there. Okay. Cut some solder. I'd use something called pick soldering most of the time, which is where I melt a bit of the solder onto the end of a soldering pick, which in this case is this titanium one here. And then I heat the piece of metal that I'm trying to solder up to the temperature that this stuff flows at, which is 1450 degrees. And then touch it where I want it to go, and it should jump on there if the temperature's right. So it's a nice way to deliver solder where you want it to go. Oh, and if you want to see how to do it, there's a good video right there. Alright, so you saw in that first part there, it jumped the gun a little bit, so I had to hold it there while I waited for it to reach temperature. That's not ideal. You want to try and hit temperature before you put it in there. I just get impatient. Oops. Okay, we've got almost a canoe now. It's got kind of a split end on it here, so let's see if we can bring those together. Smooth out this juncture. Alright, let me get 3 of these balls. Alright. So we want it to fit snugly in there, so I'm going to keep squeezing this just a little bit until it does. Now we're getting there. So that spread it back open a little bit so the middle one wasn't tight anymore. So I guess I think I did this last time, I just forgot. Get these 2 in, and then we'll squeeze that center part down a little bit. Okay, and then to prevent it from getting too dinged up, I want these to kind of hug those. So I'm going to use my round nose. I just kind of pinch those inwards on either side. That a little bit. Maybe on the top too. Make them look a little more organic. Alright, let's solder those in. I think I got that. To make the little top part, cut out a disc out of some 22 gauge as well. I did not measure how big it was. I just used my disc cutter on one that seemed about the right size. That's about 7 or 8 millimeters. What I did was, again, you can use your saw if you want to. Just kind of, since these are supposed to look sort of organic, I'm not trying to make them exact. But I'm cutting lines, you know, almost to the center, but leaving a little bit in the middle so that it stays together. I don't normally recommend this using the wrong tool, but I'm going to snip out see, I'm kind of taking out a little bit on either side. Okay, now we're just going to kind of dome that. Using a pretty small one at this stage. Kind of like a bell flower shape now, so I'm going to spend a little time with my file to kind of round these out and make them a little bit more finished looking on the edges like this. And then I'm going to use this last little damping spot. That's probably good enough. Let's get a really tiny one here now. So now it looks like that. So we're going to want to plop that over the top of this like that somehow. So let's pre-melt some solder on the tip of this, and maybe even a little bit on the inside of this as well. Always check to make sure when you're soldering little balls onto things. I always try to pry them off of there, or pretty aggressively I should say, because it really is embarrassing when components fall off later because you didn't have a good solder joint, so nobody wants that. When you're a beginner, it's pretty easy to get cold solder joints where you don't really have a flow to both sides that really adheres to it. And so that's a common problem that people when they first start out have. And that comes from not heating evenly when you're heating your piece as far as the mass is concerned. Last thing we need to do is put that stem on, and I found a little piece of 14 gauge round somewhere over here. So let's file one side of this flat. We'll flux the end. Make sure the top of this thing's fluxed. I'm just going to pick up a piece of solder on the end of this, maybe two. So we need to leave enough on there to file that down and curve it around. And so it's off that right there. Okay, so if you look at the first one, I curved it off to the left side, my left side. So this one, let's curve it off to the other side so they're symmetrical. And I do want to solder that closed, so let's see if we can't do a little quick solder on him. Hopefully nothing will fall off. Nobody wants that to happen, unless you hate watching YouTube videos hoping that people fail. I suppose there's people who do that. You know, I'm just going to go ahead and put on those ear wires right now. I found some 20 gauge. I was cleaning the floor the other day. So I'm just going to use a couple pieces of that. 20 gauge is pretty standard for French wires. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces about, I don't know, 3 inches, 10 centimeters. And I'll make a loop about 3/4 of an inch in, or I'm just spreading them open a little bit like that. Put that on there. And then where these come together right at the top of the loop here, I'm going to grab it with the ends of my chain nose pliers and bend the longer one straight upwards. Then I can just grab the loop across both of them like that. Wrap it around a couple of times. Okay, so it'll hang like that. And then after it's all polished up, I will shape that to a French wire shape. We'll let those both pickle, and I'll clean them up a little more. And I'll show you the final result in a little bit. Alright, so I have my little pea pods here. I think they look like pea pods. So I'm pleased with them, I think. They're still a little damp from when I washed them off, so they're a little... But let's do the ear wires now. I usually, right at the top where they meet, this little knot that we've created, forward. Forward. And I use an old pencil, a round pencil, to wrap this around. And I usually kind of push it in with my finger like that a little bit to give it a bit of a curve. So you get kind of a normal French hook there. What I like about doing my own, well, two things I like about doing my own ear wires. One, it's cheaper, and they're not very hard to do. Two, these are permanently attached to this because I wrapped it around there, versus store-bought ear wires, which have like a little bead you pull up and pop on, or you just close it up and has a little gap there. So I think these are more secure, less likely to lose your beautiful pea pod. And then let's cut them off just a little bit below the loops. Like that. I usually give each of the ends a little bit of a tweak like that. They're little pea pod earrings. Alright, tell me what you think in the comments. I think I kind of like them. You know, they're not too terribly complex, but they're kind of fun, you know. I just at a casual glance, I think I would know what they were supposed to represent. Which oftentimes when I'm trying to do something, it does not come out to where you would say, oh, that's a whatever. So yeah, I think they're alright. Okay, well, I get some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well, that was the Pea Pod earring project. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you go. And I'd love it if you take a moment and visit my main channel page. I realized on the last video I hit the 500 videos over the past 3.5 years now. So the previous video was my 500th video. So check out a few of the other videos over there, and make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Well, I'm celebrating doing 500 videos, and I wanted to share that celebration with you, so I put everything in my merch store at 15% off, including the ebooks, up until the end of June here. So get yourself something if you've been waiting until they went on sale. But don't forget to check out the video description down below too. Those links that I just talked about are down there, and there's even a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that particular platform. It's a nice group of people over there. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.